Yeah.
Well, greetings to all. Our numbers are mushrooming. Pat, you know that. I sent you the numbers in recent days.
You sent me the
We're
numbers.
not talking about dozens. We're not talking about scores. We're talking about hundreds of people hanging on our every word, hanging on our lips, Pat. And our
God,
minds.
they must have a sad life when they're listening to two old men talking.
Don't be saying that. Don't be saying that. You're putting bad thoughts in their head. Okay, let's talk about some of the things that has caught your attention and the attention of the nation, both sides of the border, of course. And that is the Director General of RTE, D. Forbes, has resigned. I wonder why. Would you venture a guess as to why D. Forbes, the Director General, has resigned from RTE?
You know, it's one holy mess, Jude. You know, and I feel very sorry for somebody. She says herself this morning, and it's had a serious effect on her mental health. And God bless her. She's been, and I don't think it's supposed to doing Ryan Tubridy much good. But here's for any if you've been living under a rock and haven't heard what's going on. Here's the potted version. Ryan Tubridy, it was disclosed last week. No, here I'll start it. Put it in context. In 2008. With the recession on, the people of Ireland on the public purse, not doctors, well, health workers,
people in the south
judges,
of Ireland,
police, nurses, in the south of Ireland, we're all told we all put our shoulders to the wheel and we all take a pay cut to get the country through the recession, etc. And that was the deal. And the broadcasters, now RT is a public service broadcaster, and it's public monies that fund it. So it was all their big stars were supposed to have taken pay cuts, including the aforementioned Ryan Tubridy. Mr. Tubridy, his pay was cut to a measly 445,000 or something along those lines.
Hard times.
And since about 2017, he allegedly he has been receiving a top up of 75,000 a year that no one sort of knew about. So here, it's all about trust. No one's saying Tubridy has done anything wrong personally. But according to the sort of the rules of the game, everybody's supposed to be upfront. This is public money. It's a public service broadcasting. And why was somebody getting paid 75,000 euros by the back door? Now, Tubridy's quite entitled to take it. But RT didn't. They went to the Oireachtas. They met with the Public Accounts Committee, and they told everybody Ryan Tubridy's wages were 445,000 or whatever they were. They didn't say that they were really 525,000 because he was getting 75,000 under the table. And the whole idea of the whole hoo-ha is about breach of trust, about misleading statements, and about how can we trust RTE as our national broadcaster if they're doing things like this. And Jude, it has now become a real mess. And it's there's a lot of breastfeeding and soul searching, and there's going to be two meetings this week with the PAC, the Public Accounts Committee, and the Oireachtas. And now D. Forbes, the Director General, the top person, she's done the right thing and resigned. Now, whether she goes now and meets the Oireachtas Committee is another matter. Claire Byrne, who's she was off on, I think, Thursday and Friday. And this morning she went public, and she says people are assuming because I was off on Friday that I was some way involved in all this. She says no, my daughter was involved in a dancing competition in Kerry, and it just so happened I was off. But she went into great detail about what her wages were, what her contract was, and all the rest. So she says I want that out there. So, and she's particularly well paid as well. Jude, it's all about trust. It's all about integrity. It's all about honesty. And it's all about, I know if the organs of the states are sort of not telling the truth, who can we trust? And that's what it's become a big issue.
Yeah, well, I can see how that would be the case because it is public money we're talking about. And the fact of the matter is, you may not call it a lie, but it was misrepresented to the public how much Ryan Tubridy, and we now suspect, I gather they're going to run the slide rule over the top 10 earners. But for the moment, Ryan Tubridy was getting more money than they were publicly announcing, as you say, under the counter. Now, one of the things that strike me is Ryan Tubridy's own reaction to this. When the word broke, he was out of the traps immediately to say, really, this has nothing to do with me. Well, I mean, all right, I get my paycheck, but how RTE arranged that paycheck, that's a matter entirely for them. I'm not involved.
Yeah.
Within about 24 hours, he realizes this wasn't going to wash, that he was part of it. In fact, what he was asking the public to believe was that he was getting 75,000 extra a year and not noticing it in his bank account.
Yeah.
So he had to come more or less clean on that and say that he really apologized for his initial statement, etc. My, well, two things. I would suspect, and I can't be sure, but I suspect that Ryan Tubridy may be wounded mortally as a broadcaster. I mean, RT is a big broadcaster. There are other channels, but hard to come back from something like this because he's front and center with regard to it. The second thing is this, Pat, and I think this is serious. We're forgetting as we do the sums what it is we're getting for the money. In other words, nobody has raised the question of what's the quality of the output that Ryan Tubridy and others were offering. Now, I just did a quick a glance through YouTube, and I came on two interviews that Ryan Tubridy had done separately. One was with Gerry Adams, and among the questions he asked in the very short clip that I watched, he said, I asked him, do you believe, would you say that you have blood in your hands? And Adams said, no, I wouldn't say that. But you could equally make the statement far more, maybe, that your grandfather had blood in his hands. To which Ryan retorted, don't be glib, Gerry. Don't be glib. Okay, that was like Adams one. We all know the famous Gabo interview with Adams where he lined up people to attack him. But let's talk about Ryan Tubridy for the moment. Then I looked at an interview with Martin McGuinness and Tubridy on YouTube. It's there for anybody to see it if they want to.
Yeah.
And he talks about a number of things. But one of the things he says is, do you ever find it difficult to sleep at night when thinking of your part in the conflict? And Martin McGuinness says, no, I sleep fine. I feel, I did what I believed in. But would you ask that same question of Tony Blair or Gordon Brown or some British military person, a general or whatever? And the answer he got was, oh, those are totally different circumstances. Now, I just cite those as examples of the kind of thing that major people like Ryan Tubridy, the guy at top of the tree in RTE, get away with. And we also, of course, have Miriam, who's a part of that top 10, Miriam O'Callaghan, and her famous question.
I was waiting for you to come to Miriam.
Huh?
Remember Miriam's one to Martin McGuinness during the presidential
That's
election?
exactly what I was going to mention. Yeah, well, last go to confession. So I'm just using those as examples of the output. I haven't touched on the fact that I just stopped watching the Late Late Show because I'm fed up looking at old EastEnders stars and other soap stars washed up, appropriately enough, washed up soap stars coming over to tell you how funny they are and how witty they are and how much they love their granny. So in a way, the thing that's annoying people is that they have lied about or they've misrepresented public money and how it was spent. I would have something beyond that, and that would be, I hope when they're doing a revision that they ask themselves, what kind of public broadcasting service have we got and can we make it good? Do you think there's any chance of the second of those two, Pat?
No, I don't. Jude, you summed up pretty much what I Late Late Show, and just to digress with it, it's become a Z-list program. One stage in Ireland used to be the A-list. Now, like, they're coming on people from EastEnders, Jude, I have never seen, don't know anything about them, etc., etc., etc. It needs a whole rejig. But anyway, Ryan Tubridy, to get back to your original point, I think he could be hold below the waterline. I really genuinely believe. I didn't think it last Thursday, but I think it today. Jude, Dee Forbes has resigned. That's her career over in public service broadcasting. And it's going to be very hard for Ryan Tubridy to come on if he does next Monday morning and be all full of bonhomie and and full of life. And it was the RT star broadcaster. Absolutely. He was the main man. He was the Late Late Show. He was there prime time in the morning from 9 to 10.
It's a Latter-day Gable,
best paid and so on.
Latter-day Gable.
Say again.
I was saying he was a Latter-day Gable, almost exactly. Like Gable did a morning radio show, and then at the weekend he did the Late Late, and that's exactly what Tubridy is doing. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry, Pat.
he is now. He's always going to be tainted. So I think, uh, no, that he was, well, he wasn't regarded quite on the par with Gable, but he was above the line, if you know what I mean. He was acceptable because he was warm and he was friendly and he was intelligent, and people trusted him. The last the latter thing is gone. Well, people trust him. When he said something, I have interviewed this guy, and here's a great book, and here's whatever he says now. There's always going to be, look who's chatting. Why would we believe him? And that's going to be a major issue for him.
Do you think, Pat, you see this talk about running the slide rule over 10 most highly paid presenters? Do you think that's good news or bad news, or it doesn't matter for Ryan Tubridy? Does it matter, for example, if they started finding, misrepresentations for other stars or star presenters? Would that soften the blow?
I think it probably, off the top of my head, I think it'll probably be worse, because then they'll say this organization's rotten from top to bottom. And I meant to comment too on your point. The original statement by Ryan Tubridy was a disaster. Jude, no matter, like, I don't know who, whether he put that statement out himself or he had some PR people, but whoever it was, to suggest it's not to do with me. What he must have known that RT lied to the Public Accounts Committee when they, did he never once say, that's not, by the way, that's not what I'm earning. That's point one. Point two, if he didn't notice he was earning 75,000 more than he was supposed to be earning, it shows how out of touch he was with ordinary people. 75,000 on top of your wages. That for a lot of people, 75,000 is their annual wage, and it would be a reasonably good one. But if you don't notice that, and you're supposed to be a man of the people, so on either count, it was a disaster statement to make.
You and me could have a good holiday on 75,000, I think.
Well, Jesus, if they give me 75,000 euros a year, I'd be quite happy.
Well, I can sort of understand them all wanting to keep the fact that they're paying so much out of the public eye. But I mean, there's no two ways about it. It was deliberate deception. And it wasn't just one-off. It was going on and on for years on end. And that's the first thing. And the second thing is, we don't know, but we suspect that there will be others who are in the same boat. I find it almost incredible that none of the other top 10 would have been offered some sort of, or given some sort of deal whereby, because they would know. I mean, again, with this thing, nobody knew. The other top presenters would surely know that Ryan Tubridy had a particular arrangement where his salary appeared to be such and such, but actually.
Well, Claire Byrne said this morning, she says, I can state categorically what I earn is what I earn. She says, I was unaware totally of any deals or side deals. She says, I can state categorically I have none of them.
But did you say that matched what she believed she earned? Did that match with what the public?
Yeah, she did. Yeah, she says, I have no side deals or anything. But here's the other point. Like this, you said something earlier on, and you knew it was the back of my head. RT, this thing you say about the content and about what exactly we're getting for our money. Pat Kenny was this predecessor for Ryan Tubridy. He left RT to go to Newstalk, and apparently he's on $1 million a year, 900,000. And everybody says, "Oh God, this is the talent, and they're going to go." A guy called Sean O'Rourke took over, and Sean O'Rourke was actually a guy from the newsroom, and everybody says, like, who the hell is Sean O'Rourke? What's going to happen? The listenership actually went up. So it's RT is the brand, and I'm not so sure they have to pay these people. Now, they should pay them well. I'm not this, but what do they need to pay them? 400 and 500,000? Surely a nice 200,000 would be a nice round figure for anybody in today's world.
Yeah, but Pat, put yourself into their shoes for a minute. If you were a presenter and RT offered you 200,000 a year, and News Talk or whoever offered you 800,000 a year, it wouldn't really be a problem to make a decision.
I didn't know, but and a lot of the people who are an RT would jump at 200,000 a year. It's the brand that counts. It's RT brand. And okay, if they're so brilliant and News Talk offers them, now, by the way, there's only one person there now at 800 or 900,000 a year or $1 million in News Talk, and that's Pat Kenny. No one else comes near it. That's a commercial station. But I presume there are a couple of people on RT would love an opportunity to earn 200 or 250 rather than 500,000 because they're not going to get anywhere near 500,000 anywhere else.
Well, in fact, we'll soon discover that, I suspect, because I think there'll be a weedy one. I think Tubridy's day is done, but there'll be lots of people who will get the opportunity now, I think, that wouldn't have had the opportunity in the past. And you could see fresh blood going in. They might well be a bit of a surprise. They might be really very, very good. For example, I think Claire Byrne's very good. And I think in some ways she's better than those who preceded her. There's a sort of a freshness and an openness and a lack of mannered. She's not sort of mannered in her attitude or her image. Okay, have we kicked enough of the shit out of RT now, or should we?
I would kick that to death. Yeah.
Okay, let's kick a Russian. I don't know how you pronounce his name. Jenny Prigozhin.
Jenny Prigozhin or something.
Prigozhin is the guy, the bald guy with the tanks heading for Moscow.
With the tanks in the background.
Yeah, and he said he was going to go to Moscow and he was going to sort of. He was really annoyed because there'd been Russian attacks on his men. He's a mercenary apparently. He must be a huge mercenary, 25,000 troops or something. Anyway, he was heading for Moscow, and suddenly he said, "Oh, if I go on, there's going to be Russian blood spilt, so I'll not go on." And he goes back, and he apparently struck a deal to go to Belarus and be in exile, and his army, his private army, is to be incorporated in the Russian army, and he's taking pictures, smiling, selfies with various fans before he leaves. There's something very fishy about this whole thing. If he was going to attempt a coup, if he was going to march on Moscow, would it never have crossed his mind before he was halfway that there was going to be Russian blood spilled? I mean, that's just so ridiculous. It doesn't bear thinking about. I keep thinking, that this, of course, is grist to the mill of the West. The West is delighted. Here's Russia divided and fighting itself. I have a funny feeling the whole thing might be staged.
There's a former a guy called Everard, former ambassador to Belarus, was on British ambassador with Claire Byrne, and he was actually excellent. And there was actually the scenario he painted was believable. He says apparently his understanding, he listens a lot to Russian media and other media in Eastern Europe, and seems to be well tuned in. And apparently, Yevgeny, we'll call him Yevgeny, the mercenary. He was heading towards Moscow, and he was only something like 300 kilometers from Moscow on Saturday evening when he turned around. Now, the story goes that Putin, Yevgeny, the mercenary, refused to take a phone call from Putin. Putin rang, what do you call him, Lukashenko, the president of Belarus, and says, "Go on, get on to this guy," and to ask, see, will he stop what he's doing? Apparently, Lukashenko I got a phone call, got him straight through to Yevgeny, the mercenary, and they had an hour-long conversation, and he turned around. Now, the British ambassador, former British ambassador, is saying that is very, very suspicious. And he says, Lukashenko is trying to do a takeover in reverse. He's going to try and take out Putin. He's got Putin's army is almost destroyed. They've run out of almost weapons. They've run out of men. Lukashenko, he says, his army is untouched. The Belarusian army is untouched. Russia has moved back nuclear weapons onto Belarusian territory. Now, Lukashenko has also possibly got 25,000 mercenaries from our friend. And who's on the strong seat now? And he says, this could actually be more worrying than the original thing. He says, Putin could be gone. He says, by the way, he says as well, he says, Putin did a broadcast on Saturday evening, but he says, no one's 100% certain where he did it from. It hasn't been heard of since. The Minister of Defense hasn't been heard of since. And Asimov, I think is the name of the guy who's Grasimov is the chief of staff of the military. He hasn't been heard of either. So he says, they think maybe the mercenary, Yevgeny, the mercenary, succeeded in getting the Minister for Defence to resign. That was part of the deal for
Yeah.
turning around.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if he succeeds in doing all this, Putin's days are numbered by the sound of it. But it goes to show, Jude. Now, this could all be bullshit, but the other side of the story, your man said Anthony Blinken, the U.S. Minister, boy for defense, has basically, he says he would know a lot more than we know, and he says the fact that Blinken has described this as a moving picture as we speak. He says there's a lot going on that we might not know about. But Jude, just to wrap up, if all this is going on, it's going to be, Ukraine could be the way down the list, but it's got to be good news. In fairness for Zelensky, with all this, and if the Russians are so busy fighting each other, they won't be fighting the Ukrainians.
Yeah, and I think that's the last point you've made is a very important one, that Zelensky would be delighted, and the West generally be delighted to see Russia so divided. And therefore, it's in their interest to talk up the signs of division. So well, I don't doubt for a moment there is a degree of churn, as they say, in Russia. I would say that the West wouldn't be minimizing it. In other words, they might be inflating it a bit. So I would take some of the things that are said by Blinken or others with a pinch of salt. Now, how it'll work out, I don't know, but it does seem to me a really fishy one that a guy would be about to go mount an attack or a coup in Moscow, and then suddenly say, "Oh my goodness, this is going to involve Russian blood." I say, "Oh, I couldn't have that," and turn back. The thing's laughable, really. But we'll watch it with interest and see. Okay, let's move from the sublime to, I suppose this is sublime as well. Another item that you suggested, and that was that Malachy O'Doherty of this parish, as many people will know him, he's a political commentator and a writer, veteran, you might say even. And he's come out with a statement. Now, I don't know what provoked this statement, but he says, "I know I say this a lot, but terms of abuse like super," that's S-O-U-P-E-R, super, one who takes soup, Uncle Tom and West Brit are sectarian. And he says that people who say this kind of thing is not particularly impressed by them. Well, what do you think? Is there any truth in that? There are people who would call names of Malachy.
Jude, I think he referred to so there were bigots if they use terms like that.
All right.
Well, Jude, I'm calling myself a bigot, so don't anybody get to, like I've used the term West Brit. Of course I am. Same as everybody else. Jude, I have no hesitation in referring to people like Ruth Dudley Edwards and Conor Cruise O'Brien before her as West Brits. I don't know any other term you can use when people who sort of praise and honor and sort of whatever another nation over their own, and that these are the good guys and our own people are the bad guys. I don't know, and they're always referring to the British, of course, in our conflict. The British Army are the good guys, the British politicians are honourable, and our guys are, Gerry Adams, Martin McGuinness, Bertie Ahern, Charlie Howe. They're all sleaze and whatever. Yet John Major and Bojo and all these are great men and all the rest. So, what other term would you use? And then, of course, there's also, maybe we should put in the term Castle Catholic. I've met a few of them as well. The ones who in Northern Ireland who seem to have a foot under every table, and so on. And I've met, I have to say, a couple of them. I met a woman years ago who told me that the RUC was a fine organisation, etc., and that she didn't see what the problem any law-abiding Catholic should have, and the fact that it was 93% Protestant and Unionist, she seemed to ignore. So, what are you supposed to? What terms are you supposed to use?
Yeah, I think actually what Malachy has failed to do is to, well, I'm sure he knows himself, but he hasn't said the fact that the colonist always looks for some of those who are colonized to come on to their side. Every time they look for a group of people who will, identify with them rather than with the indigenous people. And that then gives some veneer of respectability to the colonists.
Yeah.
It is certainly true that Maliki over the years has been a consistently anti-Republican figure, anti-Catholic Church as well, actually, or certainly anti-Christian Brothers. But then a lot of people are against the Christian Brothers.
Yeah, he's quite entitled to that as well. Yeah.
But again, and he has addressed. I mean, he has been advisor to the Ulster Unionist Party, as I remember once. And I remember there was some brouhaha about that in the Irish News, for which I was writing at the time. Yeah. So in many respects, Maliki has, I think he has traded on the fact that he is very clearly, from his name, Maliki O'Doherty, very clearly from the Catholic nationalist tradition. And yet here he is clearly taking a stand with those who are British and Unionist and colonist. I'm surprised why he's made this point himself. Sure, like, is this something that's only struck him now, or would he not have noticed it
the other day? And I was wondering why he came up with it, because, and he says he regards those as players. So, like, I sort of, I would like to know what terms he would like us to use, or what, because I can't think of any. And
well, you could call him Dr. O'Doherty, Pat. You could call him Dr. O'Doherty. He has got a PhD from a doctorate from Queen's. I think it's an honorary doctorate.
Yeah, well, whatever. That just struck me, Jude. And I say, I was watching. I can't remember the name of the guy. As usual, I'm terrible in names. But Trump, he was trying to inveigle this black guy to come and sort of on board. And he was referred to as an Uncle Tom. And Jude, that's what he was, because Trump's attitude towards black people in America is disgraceful. And to use your analogy or your explanation, when you get somebody coming on, just Trump, look, there's a black man who agrees with my policies. That gives him cover. Anybody that gives cover, like this is a man who refused to have black people in his buildings, refused to have a black guy on his boat, who referred to African countries as shitholes, and so on. So he wanted to cover his racism by, look, here's my black friend.
The same thing in Ireland and the same thing in Britain, certainly. I mean, somebody posted a photograph of the Taoiseach, Prime Minister of the South of Ireland, and the Prime Minister of the UK. And both are of Indian extraction, clearly. So you wonder to yourself, why is that? And my own view is that some of the most right-wing people in the Tory party are of Asian extraction. And I think that's deliberate to say, look, we don't have any racism. Look at the way we give the opportunity for people who have come here to our shores and maybe came with very little. Aren't we terrific? Same thing in the States. You'll get people in some of the political parties, and again, they're sort of elevated. Like, I think there was an awful lot of fuss, and in some ways it was an inverse form of racism about Barack Obama. The fact that he was black, or certainly not white. In fact, I think there were people who detested him for being president because he was black. But there was also an awful lot of people who said, look at how virtuous we are. This guy, color of his skin doesn't matter. That's the way it is in the great United States of America. Anyway,
over the weekend, Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary.
You should bless yourself when you say that, Pat. You should bless yourself.
Yeah. She said, it was an amazing statement that she came out with, that she had no problem with stop and search. In fact, she supported it 100%. Jude, there was 3 or 4 black people or people of color on TV yesterday, and not one of them supported it. They said it was offensive, racist, and a lot of it was over the top. Now, they were not excusing a lot of black on black killings in London with knife killings, but they said a lot of the cops, even the presenter who was black, said, I know, and he's a very gentle. He said, I have been stopped several times by police, and it's quite obvious he wasn't a terrorist, or he had been well dressed in a nice car.
Okay. We're getting a wee bit short of time, so let's zoom on and see if we can get a couple of others squeezed in here. There's an article by Emma D'Souza, whom most people know. I'm not sure what the circumstances were with her husband. I think it was that he wasn't being treated as an Irish citizen or something like that.
Yeah, I think he was American, and she tried to get him defined as Irish when he come to, and the only way he could get citizenship was to describe himself as British.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
and she
Okay.
wanted the right, but she wanted the right to call him Irish because he had taken out Irish citizenship,
Uh,
as far as I remember.
Anyway, she's a very vocal presence in the media at the moment, and well, for some time now. And she writes well, I must say. I agree with most of what she says. One of the things she says today in Irish Times, though, is that it's time that parties, political parties that is, in the South, laid out their vision of what a united Ireland might be. And she says, even Sinn Féin hasn't laid out what they believe a united Ireland would look like. And they really should be leading the way. Well, would you agree with her, Pat?
To an extent, Jude. It's very sort of woolly what they said. Now, I love the one from Leo Varadkar. He said, we should only hold the vote when we have laid out exactly what it is to the people. But that's grand, except Leo has done bugger all to lay out what should be put to the people. He's done nothing. They haven't pulled up their socks and said, right here. Now Sinn Féin, some time back, they did, put forward several things. Should it be a federal state? Should it be a unitary state? Should it be a confederal state? Or confederation? I can't even remember half of it. It was all very woolly and very nebulous. I know, but in fairness, I remember at the time, I think maybe it was Michelle. I mean, maybe it was Mary. I'm not certain. Said, look, we don't want to be prescriptive. What we want everything, put it all out there. Have citizens' assemblies, distill down what we want, and then put it to the people. Now, myself and yourself have said this a million times.
Absolutely.
Like until people know what they've got and so on. But Jude, uh, what exactly is the Irish government doing about putting all this together? As Sinn Féin. Now, Paul Gosling, I have to declare a vested interest because I was involved in it. Paul Gosling was by far the main person involved. He put several books, and they're very good and they're very detailed. But all he was doing was putting out the groundwork. So the groundwork is done to an extent. Then they can build on all that. But he did research on the health service. He did research on policing. He did research on transport, education, etc., etc., etc. Now, Jude, I think, and Micheál Martin, I've said this before, and I'm repeating it. Micheál Martin has run away from setting up a citizens' assembly. Right. I would like to know why.
I absolutely agree with you. And that's why I would sort of part the ways with Emma de Souza, because she doesn't talk about a citizens' assembly at all. And I can understand the reason why political parties don't say that we should have this kind of state, or this is our vision of a united Ireland. I think they're very smart. What you should have is a citizens' assembly, sitting for a year or even 2 years, calling on experts, drawing up report, asking questions, and coming out with some finalized conclusion as they see it. And then allow the political parties to look at this, to say what they agree with, to say what they disagree with, and give their policy. I think it'd be putting the cart before the horse to have the political parties saying what they want and then have a citizens' assembly afterwards, because it begins to look very like they're telling the people what's good for them. And I mean, that's not a good idea, not a good idea for a new Ireland. We haven't had enough of that kind of thing. I'm really quite surprised that it was Emma de Souza, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it was her for sure, who said that, the political parties want to speak up. I agree it'd be good if they spoke up, but not before citizens' assembly. And that's very important. But they should be putting a squeeze on. The only people who can give us a citizens' assembly, as I understand it, and that is the Dublin government. Am I right in that belief?
Yeah, absolutely. But you know the other thing as well. Micheál Martin and Leo Varadkar have done it a million times, and I've heard them doing it. And they keep saying we need to be very careful that it could create divisions in the north and all this. Jude, if you use that as the sort of the blueprint for not doing, you'll never do anything in the north. Never. No, it could stir up trouble and it's divisive and all that sort of stuff. Let's make Northern Ireland work first before we do. Jude, Jesus, let's make Northern Ireland work first. It's been going for 100 years and it still hasn't worked, and it's getting worse. So how long is a piece of string?
Yeah.
The reality, I think that's a cop out. No, it's sort of like running down the clock. Keep running away from it, and all. So we don't have to do anything if we use this term. Oh, it will be divisive. I don't get that.
Dealt with that point, I think, very well. She emphasised that. If you take that line, you wouldn't have had a Good Friday Agreement. If you take that line, you probably wouldn't have any elections, because by their nature, those things put people into different camps. It's a question of whether you respect democracy as a result. So that notion. She also said one other thing, and I think it's quite important. She said, should the parties not be aware, the government in particular, should they not be aware of the fact that they have a constitutional duty to explore possibility of United Ireland? I think not many people, including me, know that. I've forgotten the name of the guy who told me that. He was a Fianna Fáil senator, maybe, from Kerry. Do you know the guy?
What do you call him? Geez, I know who you're on about.
Was it Daly?
Mark Daly.
Mark Daly.
Mark Daly.
He was the one that first alerted me to that notion that the Constitution says that the government is supposed to be pushing and exploring the possibility of United Ireland. And in fact, what they're doing is quite the reverse. They're backing away from it. They're sort of like, dare I say it, Ryan Tubridy, saying, oh, it really has nothing to do with us. Although on the other hand, it'd be a good idea. So I think they're in a bit of a mess whenever you start making comparisons with Ryan Tubridy. We're out of time, Pat. Look at that. Time flew.
Absolutely.
We could have been talking for another hour at least.